Friends. Whenever we talk about superhero films, the two names that always come up are Marvel and DC. But within the DC universe, there's one character who shocked everyone when he first appeared on the big screen. A character that people used to laugh at in the comics, but through the movies, he became a fan favorite. So much so that today his name alone has generated billions of dollars in business. Yes, I'm talking about Arthur Curry, our very own Aquaman. Hardly anyone could have imagined that a character who was never taken seriously would go on to become DC's highest-grossing solo film ever. And now, as we start talking about Aquaman 3, it's important to look back at the journey that began in 2018 and continued through 2023. So let's start with Aquaman. 2018. At that time, the DC universe was struggling. Movies like Batman vs Superman and Justice League had raised expectations, but delivered disappointing results. That's when James Wan, the master of horror and visual spectacle, was handed the responsibility of bringing Aquaman to life on a massive canvas. Jason Momoa had already appeared as Aquaman in Justice League 2017, and his personality, his look, and his attitude made people excited to see more of him. But the big question was, could a water-based superhero actually float at the box office? Or would he sink? The moment the film was released, audiences saw how brilliantly James Wan brought the underwater kingdom of Atlantis to life on the big screen. Aquaman wasn't just the story of a superhero fighting villains. It was about a man who was half human and half Atlantean, trying to find balance between two worlds. Jason Momoa's swagger, Amber Heard's strong presence as Mera, the performances of Willem Dafoe and Nicole Kidman, and Patrick Wilson's powerful villain turn as Ocean Master. All of it together made the movie a visual treat. And then came the box office storm. Aquaman became a massive global hit, earning over $1.1 billion worldwide and becoming DC's very first film to enter the billion-dollar club. For the struggling DC universe, this was a huge victory. Audiences fell in love with the visuals, the action, the storyline, and most importantly, Jason Momoa's larger-than-life personality. Naturally, after such success, the studio had to think about a sequel. That's where Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom 2023 came in. Expectations were sky high, because when the first film is such a blockbuster, fans want the second one to be even bigger. But, as we've often seen with sequels, meeting those expectations is never easy. James Wan once again poured his creativity into the film. Jason Momoa returned with his trademark swagger, and the story dove deeper into Atlantis and its enemies. This time, Black Manta was elevated as a stronger villain, giving the movie a darker edge. The visuals were still stunning, but behind the scenes, DC politics and Warner Brothers' internal shifts had a big impact on the film. Released in December 2023, Aquaman 2 didn't perform nearly as well as its predecessor. The movie made about $434 million worldwide, a huge drop compared to the first film. It didn't receive the same positive reviews, and audiences simply didn't show up in the same numbers. The reason was clear. The DC universe itself was on the verge of a reboot. James Gunn and Peter Safran had already announced a brand new DCU, starting with Superman Legacy 2025. Fans knew that the Lost Kingdom might be Aquaman's last big chapter. And that brings us to the main question. Will there ever be an Aquaman 3? If it happens, what will it look like? And if not, what's next for Jason Momoa? Jason Momoa has achieved incredible fame as Aquaman. His personality fits the role so perfectly that whenever people hear the name Aquaman, they instantly think of him. But DC Studios has made it clear that the franchise is being rebooted, with new stories, new actors, and a brand new vision. James Gunn has already said that the future begins with Superman Legacy in 2025, and right now, there are no concrete plans for Aquaman 3. Still, here's where things get interesting. Jason Momoa has repeatedly said that he wants to stay with DC, whether as Aquaman or as another character. Reports have even suggested that he might play Lobo in the new DCU, a role that fits his personality almost too perfectly. But for fans, Momoa will always be Aquaman first. So the real question is there any hope left for Aquaman 3? Logically speaking, there's been no official announcement so far. James Wan has said he would only consider a third film if he's given complete creative freedom. Meanwhile, DC Studios is focused on rebuilding core characters like Superman and Batman, leaving Aquaman on the sidelines for now. But one thing is certain, You can never ignore fan power. The success of Aquaman proves that with the right script and the right timing, the character can still make waves at the box office. And that little fact is what keeps the hope alive, that one day, in some phase of the new DCU, we might just get to see Aquaman 3. If we look at the comics, the world of Aquaman is so vast that countless new stories could be brought to the big screen. Villains like Black Manta and Ocean Master have already been used in the film, but DC Comics holds so much more. Atlantean politics, ancient sea creatures, and hidden underwater kingdoms that haven't yet been properly explored in live action. If James Wan or another director takes on Aquaman 3, the story could dive even deeper, showing Arthur Curry not just as the king of Atlantis, but as a father and a true leader. Jason Momoa himself has repeatedly expressed how deeply connected he feels to this role, and he's made it clear that if given the chance, he would love to return in Aquaman 3. If that happens, the film could be even more personal than the previous two. By the end of The Lost Kingdom, Arthur had a family, and moving forward, the conflict between his responsibilities as both a father and a king could give the story a powerful emotional core. Fans could connect on a deeper level, because the true strength of superheroes has always been their relationships. Now let's talk about the cast. If Aquaman 3 does happen, Jason Momoa will obviously lead the film, but there's a strong chance Nicole Kidman could return as Atlanta. Patrick Wilson's Ocean Master might reappear with a new shade of complexity, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's Black Manta could once again rise as a major threat. Amber Heard's situation, however, remains uncertain. Her screen time was already reduced during The Lost Kingdom, so her involvement in a third film is questionable. Still, fans wonder who will play Mira, because without her, Arthur's story feels incomplete. When it comes to the director, James Wan has helmed the first two Aquaman films, and it's his visionary approach that made this franchise so stunning. But he's also made it clear, if there's a third part, he would only do it with full creative freedom. On the other hand, DC Studios, now led by James Gunn and Peter Safran, already has a detailed plan in place with films like Superman, Legacy, and The Brave, and The Bold. The big question is whether James Wan and DC Studios can get on the same page. If yes, then Aquaman 3 could take its visuals and action to the next level. If not, the project might go to a new director with a fresh vision. Now, let's talk about the most interesting aspect: budget and box office. Looking back, Aquaman 2018 had a budget of around $160 to $200 million and grossed more than $1.1 billion worldwide. The Lost Kingdom 2023, however, had a similar budget of around $200 million, but earned only $434 million globally. That means the studio will think very carefully about the budget for a potential third film. Realistically, a movie with heavy visual effects like this cannot be made for less than $180 to $220 million. But at the same time, Warner Brothers would expect it to gross at least $700 to $800 million worldwide to be profitable. So the big question: can Aquaman 3 really make that kind of money? The answer depends heavily on the overall brand value of the new DCU and Jason Momoa's star power. If James Gunn's DCU wins back the trust of fans with its early projects, then when Aquaman 3 eventually arrives, people will definitely show up in theaters. And if the story and emotional depth are stronger than the first two films, word of mouth could push it even further. In the best case scenario, with the right timing and marketing, Aquaman 3 could potentially earn anywhere between $800 million and $1 billion worldwide. Now let's shift to the bigger picture: DCU's new direction and Jason Momoa's place in it. James Gunn has already named his first DCU chapter Gods and Monsters, and so far, Aquaman 3 has not been mentioned as part of it. However, Gunn has made it clear that he's not going to ignore actors who are perfect fits for their roles. That means even if Aquaman 3 doesn't happen right away, there's still a possibility that Aquaman could return in a later phase of the DCU. At the same time, Jason Momoa's name has been strongly linked to Lobo, a character whose personality matches his perfectly. But no matter what, fans' love for Momoa as Aquaman runs so deep that it might push DC Studios to bring him back in some form. Now imagine for a moment, if Aquaman 3 really happens, What a visual spectacle it could be! The depths of the ocean, ancient mysteries, Atlantean politics, and high-stakes superhero drama, all combining to create a cinematic experience meant for the big screen. With Jason Momoa's charismatic presence, James Wan's directing style, and the new DCU's direction, the film could turn into not just a box office success, but also a movie that stays in fans' hearts forever. So, right now, the future of Aquaman 3 is uncertain, but the hopes are still alive. Because when fans want something badly enough, studios often find a way to make it happen. And let's not forget, the first Aquaman already proved that this character is far more than a punchline. He's a pillar of the DC universe, and if given the chance, he could once again rise on the box office waves and swim his way back into the billion-dollar club. So friends, if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more updates. Thanks for watching.